All right, man. Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to forego my bio that I normally do. I will say that God is number one, period. I hope that He always stays number one and at the center of my life and everything that I do, and this podcast is no different. But other than what comes up in today's episode, there will be none of the normal bio where I talk about myself. Today are the tales of another gunfighter and the advice of another gunfighter. Now, gunfighting is a small remnant of the population of true warriors, true professional gunfighters. John is one. Now, you'll get to hear about John in this episode. I know John from more than this episode. He is an old friend, a brother in arms, and a brother in Christ. Before we get into the episode, I would encourage you, if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, scroll down, hit some stars. It's a free, easy way while you're listening to really help out the podcast. Again, scroll down. There'll be a thing for some stars. Just hit it. Submit a review. It literally takes a few seconds. Guys, a lot of time went into making this podcast. The recording it is the easy part. A lot goes into this. A lot of effort was put into this. If you value this content, if you want more of this content, if you think this content is valuable for you and other men out there, please consider supporting. You can do that by going to goodshepherdtraining.com. goodshepherdtraining.com. There's two ways on there. You'll see two links. The best way, and the way I encourage you, is on Patreon. That makes you a patron. You get a lot of cool patron-only content on there. That is a reoccurring thing every month. You can give the fraction of the cost of a box of ammo. You could literally sign up for $1. I put no minimum on there. $1 a month. But I know that not everybody wants to do that, wants a reoccurring payment. I recently set up, because of the encouragement of another patron, another way. There's a Venmo link on there. You can literally just give one time. If you're like, you know what, that episode was worth something to me. I value this content. I appreciate it. You can do either one of those. And again, you do that via goodshepherdtraining.com. With that, men, warriors, let's get into this episode of Gunfighter Life. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. It is my great pleasure today to introduce a professional gunfighter, international man of mystery, ladies' man, a man among men, and an old friend of mine, John. John, do you want me to use your full name or just John?
John is just fine for now. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
No worries, John. John and I have quite a long relationship as gunfighters together and in the gun world. You often hear me talk about in the bio how I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. And one of the men I was blessed to work with was John. John is a gunfighter among gunfighters. We're professional gunfighters, the whole team, and I probably would say the hardest working guy on the team. So,
thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and a true gunfighter in the truest sense of the word. So that's how I know him. He was, like I said, we worked together as professional gunfighters, which I was blessed to do. We worked a lot of big events. Anything from working with the Secret Service to, working with celebrities, working in really, really big crowded arenas full of people to prevent active shooters. And that was kind of our bread and butter day to day in that job. I was very blessed to work with him on that. And why don't you introduce yourself, John?
Sounds great, Mike. Don't forget, we worked with presidential candidates too. That was some of the more fun stuff that we got to do. Those guys were awesome. And
agree
with their politics, it was great to stand next to them and get to know them as people. Um,
Yeah, I don't really get political on these podcasts, but it's my duty to protect life, and I don't care whose life that is. If it's my job to protect them, then I don't care what color their lapel pin is or whatever.
so my name's John. I've been operating since 2004. I've been a DoD contractor. I've worked for different military branches. I've been on an HRT unit, an SRT unit. I'm the owner and CEO of Stack Rack Brew, Combat Coffee Company. I have been a shooter my entire life. So I know we'll get into that a little bit deeper. I have a background in interrogation and some survival skills, and I have actively, for the course of the last 18 years, pursued a life of making people better versions of themselves, better shooters. And I think that the biggest blessing I've had is just interacting with every type of person in the world and just being able to get to know them and to try and help guide them and direct them into being better versions of themselves is a huge thing that is very important to me in my life. So I've dedicated my life to building my knowledge, building my strength, and using that to help build other people in this world.
So, John, I know you, but other people may not know. One of the things I respect about you most and what defines us most, before being gunfighters, we're Christians. Serve God and follow Jesus Christ, however you want to put that. But that is number one in my life, and I know that you share that same belief system. Yeah, and I don't think you're shy about that. Do you want to talk about that at all? Just when you became a Christian or any of that?
Yes. So in 1999, I became a Christian. I was at a pretty low point in my life, low enough to where I know a lot of people have been there. I was low enough to the point to where I contemplated ending my life. And at that point, sometimes you get so stuck in that pit of despair that the only place you have to look up is up. And once my eyes looked up, I started to feel that internal change and that internal movement. Becoming a Christian helped me to see things more clear as to what kind of a man I wanted to be for myself, my children, and my wife, or wife to be. So that impact also had a huge play in me learning to respect the life that's been created on this earth and wanting to protect that life. And I started moving in that direction more so then than ever before in my life, to knowing that internally I was born and bred to be a life preserver, both spiritually and physically.
Amen, man. So you know me, so you'll know this, but for the people that maybe this is the first time they're hearing about this, they've listened to Simple Man Sermons or Alpha Male Podcast, then they'll know that my testimony is similar in that I didn't grow up a Christian. I wasn't a Christian, and I really hit a low point as well, where I really didn't see the point of living anymore. And instead of ending it, I decided to give my life to God. Anyway, my life I literally was born again. I was literally a new man after that. I was as different from that man as you are from me. Like I am a new creation in God, in Christ, after that day. And it's humbling, and it's kind of humbling and to look back and see how far God had to beat me into submission, how far the Lord had to beat me down into submission before I would submit. But I would say there's nothing unmanly or unwarrior-like about submitting to God. I would, yeah.
No, I agree with you 100% on that. Being a Christian and being a preserver of life and following the teachings of God and understanding the true meaning of what it means to be a protector aligns itself with the Bible. The Bible talks about what it means to be a protector of women and children, and what it means to be a protector of this world. And I think when you align yourself with God, you become more aligned and in tuned with understanding what that role looks like, and understanding that when you're in that role, you know where you're going. You already know where you're going when you penetrate a room or you put yourself in a situation where your life might end. And it makes it all so much easier because you know that you're doing it for the right reasons and for the right course of action as far as what God has called us to be and do.
Yeah, amen. That comes right out of God's word. You shall not stand idly by while somebody takes the life of your neighbor, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself, which means that if somebody's trying to take the life of your neighbor, it's your duty as a man, as a warrior, as a child of God to stand up against evil and fight against that.
Absolutely. One of the things I'd love to say, Mike, is when we were talking earlier about how we were before we became Christians, one of the analogies I love to use is people go, what was your life before and then after? And I said, well, the easiest way I love to describe it is I tell them, I go, it's like one of those old TVs from, the 50s. When you first start to understand and know God, it's really fuzzy. The picture's really fuzzy because you don't know them, you don't understand them. And it's like working those little bunny ears. You move those little bunny ears left and right. And the more you move and the more you adjust the UHF and the VHF, the more clear that picture comes. And the more clear that picture comes, the more you start seeing the true you that you're supposed to be and the true you that you were created to be. And the more you start seeing your significance in this world and finding that significance. So for me, I love to tell people, I'm like, it's like an old 50s TV. When you first start, it's going to be fuzzy. It's going to be, you know something's there, but you're not quite sure. And the more you adjust and pour into it, the clearer that picture gets and the more defined you become.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's a good analogy. And maybe not for the millennials that are listening, for all of us that lived through the 80s and all that, it's good stuff.
Go on YouTube and look up 1950s TVs. You'll get the analogy.
You'll see, if you're a gunfighter, you probably see a bunch of them at the outdoor shooting ranges that people shoot and leave. So That's what we're talking about. All right. That's great, man. I appreciate that. And obviously, that's central in my life, and I know that's central in your life. So I appreciate you talking about that.
Absolutely.
Moving on to gunfighting, before we get out of the background, if you want to talk about it, if not, I'll just edit this part out. But a lot of gunfighters are obviously a fan of the movie Tombstone. A lot would consider it the quintessential American, Western, maybe the quintessential gunfighting movie. And you were actually in Tombstone. Do you want to talk about that at all?
No, I was mainly just did the extra work and stuff. I was pretty young when I got called onto that. I think I had more credit with working with the TV series Deadwood. That was really fun. I got to hang out with a lot of people there. I was pretty young when Tombstone came out and stuff. I just got to do a little bit of work on that, meet some of the actors and stuff. It's by far one of my most favorite movies ever made because it's a great story of, those guys were gunfighters. You look at when they went into the OK Corral and they knew what they were walking into, but they did it for the right reasons. They went in there for justice and to keep the peace of the city of Tombstone. They went in there. Those guys were gunfighters. All those guys then were gunfighters. Not much has changed. You look at a Safari drop leg and you look at an old, Hollywood drop leg holster. The technology really hasn't changed when it comes to that. Our guns have changed, but those guys were true gunfighters. They went in there guns ablazing to keep the peace, and they knew what they're walking into. And to me, it's one of the greatest stories about good over evil too, outside of Star Wars.
Star Wars is great too.
Amen.
That's cool, man. Just before we get into the gunfighting stuff, you've met a lot of celebrities, both in those experiences and working when we worked together as just top active shooters. Any of your favorite celebrities?
Yes. Brad Garrett was amazing. I got an opportunity to meet Brad Garrett at the World Series of Poker when we were doing some EP stuff over there, and became friends with him. Chris Angel was probably one of my all-time favorite people to work with. Did a lot of stuff for him. I thought he was great. Working with Bernie Sanders was amazing. Someone I wouldn't vote for, but as a person, he was wonderful. As a person, he treated us with so much respect. It was amazing. I didn't expect somebody to treat us with that much respect for the very short time that we got to see him.
Pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. As far as that, I think some of the most famous people I met aren't famous. I got to work with some pretty amazing people on the team that to me, I looked up quite a bit. Some of the guys that we've trained with, Brian Hartman and Doug Janowitz at PFC, some of the stuff they taught me then is a huge influence of shaping me, making me in the gunfighter I am today. They taught me a lot, both growth-wise as a gunfighter and as my mindset and confidence with and proficiency. But they also taught me some lessons through that carried on in so much more than what I've done. So I think some of the most famous people I met were people that aren't famous that I look up to so much.
That's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. All right. Your favorite handgun?
Man, that's a trick question. Are you my favorite modern handgun or my favorite handgun of all time? Because that's like asking somebody what their favorite movie is.
I know. Let's say that you are a professional gunfighter still, and you're kicking down doors, and you only have a handgun. What handgun?
Oh man, that's the Staccato P Duo or my Shadow Systems. Right now, I'm shooting a Shadow Systems Combat Elite, and I love that gun. I mean, 60 yards, I'm banging steel all day long with it. So
that's awesome, man.
Guns, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the Staccato.
Yeah, man. I don't have a Staccato. As you know, I have the STIs, the older versions. I love those. I haven't, because Staccato's not around anymore. I just can't bring myself to cut the top off. I want to put an optic on it, but I love those guns, man.
Absolutely. Get a new Staccato with optic mount, man. They're great.
Oh man, I'm steady trying to sell guns to fund the podcast thing to get going. So not right now, but I'm not complaining. I got a SIG 226 on my hip with an RMR on it. So
P320 X-Carry Legion with Hollow Sun 507C, which is the same one I've got on my Shadow Systems, and I loved it. Great shooting guns. I just got used to that Glock platform. I was out shooting my Glock quite a bit. I started out running it, and I stepped up to a Staccato, which I love, my all-time favorite gun in the collection. But as far as something to carry, I did go with the Shadow Systems.
Yeah, that's why I went with the SIG. I switched back with forth between an M17 and a 226 because they're about the biggest guns I'm willing to carry all the time.
Yes. I also, since it's summertime and I am a lot slender, I'm more of a running back than I am a linebacker. So I'm pretty tactically fit is what I like to call it, tactical athlete. I do carry a Glock 43X. I'm running the Shield Systems 15-round mag and their mag release, and a Katana flared mag well for those quick mag reloads, which we all want.
But yeah, man, theirs are all good choices. At least you're not just running the peanut butter Glock anymore, but you loved that thing, man.
Oh, that peanut butter Glock had 11,000 rounds through it, and I never had it give me one trouble.
I know you love that gun, man. Yeah.
Tired.
Anyway, favorite. Let's move on. Favorite rifle.
Are we talking bolt action or?
No, let's talk like professional gunfighting rifle. Like you got a long gun and you're doing whatever it is, EP work, convoy work. You're doing contracting work, whatever.
So I'm running which has so far been my favorite so far. I've got a Geisley URGI sitting on an older Colt LE lower, running an EOTech with a magnifier and a Silencer Co. 5.56 can on the end of it, and she is an 11 5-inch length Geisley trigger, running the Arisaka for my light mount system and Surefire light, and then I'm running the Arisaka hand stop, the shorty hand stop on it. I love it. She bangs steel all day long. She comes up, she points great, operates great. I love the length of the barrel. It's not a 10.5, it's an 11.5, so I like that little bit extra and stuff to get those rounds out there and get them on target. So she shoots amazing and suppressed. I rarely get any gas back in my face with her suppressed. So she's a great gun.
Yeah, man, that 11.5 I was wrong for a long time. I thought like those short pistol, like whatever you want to call them, ARs were kind of worthless. But I think that 11.5, I changed my mind after running one on the team for a while. That 11.5 is really a sweet spot. They're just good for tight spaces. They're good for just all around guns. That it's a shame that you got to kind of choose whether you're going to SBR it, or that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But that 11.5 length in an AR really is a good working man's gun.
No, and I agree. I remember when we were on the teams together, I was running that PW West. It was a 10.5, and I remember you shooting it a couple of times on the range, and you're like, okay, I like this, but I don't see the thought process behind it. But sometimes, Mike, I mean, we all go through this in life. Sometimes always a white belt, especially as gunfighters. As gunfighters, we're always white belt. We should always be learning. And it's odd to see people's mindsets start to develop and change and kind of get out of that thought process of, okay, well, I don't see the validity of this length of a barrel, or how this length of a barrel is going to provide what I need. But then you start shooting them and your mindset kind of changes, and it's kind of cool to see people do that. And that's what happened with me too, because I went from 10.5 and I was like, well, I don't want an 11.5. That's an inch longer. But then I shooting an 11.5 and I was like, okay, that little bit of extra stuff that I get from it was so much more beneficial to me. And I was like, okay, and even my mindset changed, because I was pretty hardcore for a long time on Mark 18s. I was a big Daniel Defense Mark 18 guy and thought that was the greatest thing in the world. And then I shot my buddy's Geisley, and I haven't gone back since. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, it's you touched on something bigger there than just a gun. It's always, if just as a man and as a gunfighter in general, if you're not always constantly trying to improve, then you're probably starting to suck.
Absolutely. Like people, if you're not getting 1% better every day, then you're going to be stagnant. And that 1% better than you were yesterday is that constant drive for me. I'm always trying to make myself better at something, whether it's reading a little bit more, or shooting a little extra, or dry firing more, or listening better, or, I'm always trying to learn and move forward, because that's what we're here for. I mean, if you're not moving forward, then you're standing stagnant or you're moving backwards. And who wants to do that?
Yeah, man, that's great. And I've been stubborn and wrong a few times on all. Well, I'm wrong a lot. Just I'm a man. I'm flawed. But as far as gunfighting goes, I was also against optics on pistols for a long time.
Yes.
And then I actually was like, well, you know what? Even though I'm probably right, because I'm arrogant sometimes, I'm gonna run one for a couple of months and see actually try really hard and see how they do. And I have to admit, after a couple of months, they are better. Not for every circumstance, but for most circumstances, they allow you to get the same quality of hit with less in a shorter time frame. And if you can be more fast and more accurate as a gunfighter, then you want to do that.
Well, absolutely. And as we know, I mean, we've always talked about the idea of, what matters in a gunfight. Seconds matters in a gunfight, right? And if you ain't cheating, you ain't winning. You want the guy in front of you to make all the mistakes. Great thing that Brian Hartman and Doug Janowitz taught us. And anything you can do to get the upper hand is going to give you better mission success. I will say, as I get older, I'm 51 now, and my eyes are starting to get a little bit more fatigued. And, I'm running a 507C hollow sun with that nice bright green dot in there. And the other day I was out shooting 60 yards, stacking rounds with witnesses, stacking 60 yards on steel, one right on top of each other with that optic, just banging steel like crazy. And, if I was running just iron sights, I don't know how proficient I would be consistently hitting that same area of mass with that same gun without an optic on it. So I love that it has helped me, where naturally my body is becoming older and more flawed, that it makes up and helps those areas to be, make me a higher caliber of an operator.
Nice, man. Yeah, like I said, I was wrong on those optics. I was wrong on those for a long time, and I had to admit it, that they are better. And if as a gunfighter you're not willing to use the best tool for the job, then you're probably not a great gunfighter, because somebody else is willing to.
Absolutely, and somebody else will. And like I said, I mean, if we're each other at 60 yards and you're getting in, you got to change somebody's behavior 60 yards, and that guy's got an optic and you don't, and he's 25 and you're 55, chances are you're probably not going to walk away.
Yeah. Or you're in an active shooter scenario and you can get a hit at 60 yards either way, but you can do it. It might take you 4 seconds to line up your sights with iron sights and get everything set. Or it might take you a second and a half with an optic. Are you willing to sacrifice, 2 or 3 people's lives while you get your iron sights set up because you didn't want to admit that optics were better? Like, no.
I agree.
So it's a good point.
The thing about mindset is always moving toward success. Mindset is always moving towards some sort of victory. And as long as you'll hear me talk about mindset all the time. I've got this great print behind me right now that's on my shelf. One says occupation badass, and the other one says mindset, and it gives the definition of mindset. And it talks about the mindset is to reach the highest potential, to reach victory, to reach that mission success. And anytime you can tweak anything at all to get there, and being able to be open enough to change that mindset to get that mission success, I think that shows that you really are a true gunfighter and that you are always seeking to do whatever you can to mitigate life and to preserve as much life as you can. And if you can do it in those, 3 seconds, awesome.
Nice.
That, like we were talking about before, seconds matter in gunfight, seconds matter in everything. And a lot can happen in that split second.
Yeah, agreed. All right, moving on. What about favorite shotgun?
Oh man. So my favorite shotgun I've ever owned, and I know you're a Benelli guy until I think you owned a Benelli. I remember you got your Benelli and you're like, oh man, this Benelli, I don't know. My shotgun of all time was my FN Police Auto. My FN Police Auto was my all-time favorite shotgun. It wasn't the pistol grip version. It was a straight shotgun style version. I don't know what that's called. You'll have to forgive me on that one, but I love that shotgun. It shot amazing. It was my first semi-auto tactical shotgun, and it's by far one of my favorite because I learned how to run it. And once I got it tuned and everything, that thing just ran like a dream. And it's the only one I've ever owned. So I've stuck with it, and she's been a great gun.
That's awesome. Yeah, those are great guns. I don't even know if they still make those anymore, but they're fantastic.
It's hard to find.
Yeah, no kidding. No, they are great guns. I knew you were going to say that. I knew that was your favorite shotguns. I just figured I'd ask you because it's kind of an underrated shotgun. Most people are like Benelli M4, and I had a Benelli M4 and I didn't like it. I settled on a Benelli M2. But yeah, it's a very underrated shotgun. The FN SLPs, I think they're called, or something like that. They're fantastic. Yep.
Amazing. In fact, I had a friend that had a Benelli, and we'd go out, and he was shooting my FN, and he's a local PD here. Not going to say what PD. Don't want to give away my location, but right. Gray man always wants to be gray.
Yeah.
So, it's funny because we shot, and he shot that FN. He's like, "Oh my, this is amazing," and I'm like, "I know, right?" And he goes, "And this is cheaper than mine." I go, "Well, yeah, at the time it was." But yeah, it was, I mean, it just ran, and he loved it. And he ended up, I still talk to him. We're still good friends and stuff, but he ended up running one and was trying to run one with the department. So I don't know what happened with that, but I know once he shot mine, he got rid of his Benelli and ended up with an FN. Got on gun broke, right? Yeah.
That's an awesome shotgun, man. Okay. Let's move on. What common misconceptions have you seen as a gunfighter, as a trainer of gunfighters, versus like actual real world boots on the ground gunfighting versus like what I would call the gun culture, the guys that drink Black Rifle coffee? And there's nothing wrong with that stuff. The guys that drink the coffee and wear the t-shirts, but have never actually trained or done any serious gun work. What are the biggest misconceptions you see? Okay, so let's see here. That's a very open-ended question. So right now I'm training 4 guys. I had 3 guys today that I was training. And I think the biggest misconception that I'm seeing right now between the tactical world and the gun culture world is once again mindset. The guys I had today, they still want to have that old school isosceles stance. They're not going to a sort of athletic stance, and getting them out of the idea that body position is key, because you can move, you can see that
270 degrees if you need, like, there's so much there. But I think the biggest thing I'm seeing right now, and this is going to sound horrible, and I know a lot of people, I'm tired of people thinking that because you're in the military, you're a better shooter.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. Most soldiers and Marines and
Yes.
which I was. So, but most of them are not great shooters. They're competent in gun handling.
I was with a PD guy. We're shooting plates at 20 yards, and I watched him dump 17 rounds, knock down 4 plates. And then you've been on the streets for 10 years now, right? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, yeah, but I don't ever shoot. And I'm like, well, you literally just shot one about 1.5 feet high left. I go, if you were in front of somebody, that's going to hit a bystander.
Yeah.
And so I said, what's going on? Like, what is going on here? And he goes, well, you train with these guys. So the reason why you can hit all those plates under, hit 6 plates under 5 seconds is because you train with different guys. I'm like, no, it's all about training, man. You don't have to be training with team 2 or team 4 or MARSOC Raiders, or you need to be out there training, some of the greatest.
Train yourself.
Yeah. And discipline. So I think the biggest misconception for me is that, but the other thing that really drives me crazy is all these guys that are gun collectors and enthusiasts, but not actual gun shooters. I have friends that will sit there and crack open their safe and show me. I literally, the other day, a buddy of mine, I won't give a name, but he's a really great guy. He worked for Blackwater. He cracks open his safe. He has over 100 pistols. He has probably 8 or 9 suppressed weapons. And I'm sitting there looking at this going, okay. And I asked him, when was the last time you went out shooting any of that? He goes, well, I shoot every once in a while. And I'm looking at him. He's showing me this picture, and we're having coffee. And I look, he's not carrying. He had nothing on him, no carrying. And I'm sitting there going, well, there's, that's the thing that drives me crazy the most. It's like this, hey, I have all the guns. And it's like, and the sad thing is, if we're going to look at that through any sort of survival situation, you hear all these people say, oh, well, I've got all these guns and all this ammo and stuff. That's wonderful. But if you're not training, and I am, now I have all your guns. Now I have all your ammo. Now I have all your food, because when it comes down to it, I'd rather spend $1,000 on ammo than $1,000 on guns.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. I let me chime in real quick, because you say a couple of things that I harp on all the time, and I didn't know how John and I are friends, but I had no idea how I was going to answer these questions. I want to reiterate what he said, because it's true. Number one, most cops are not gunfighters. And again, I was LAPD. Most cops are not gunfighters. They are administrators that happen to carry a gun just in case. And then 2 is that training, you go to training schools to learn how to train yourself. If you go to a training school, it's like working out. If I go work out really hard for 1 weekend a year, I'm not going to be buff. Like, you go to training schools to learn the fundamentals so you can go back and train yourself. That's the biggest thing on that. So, yeah, and I agree, it's better to have a couple of guns. And as you know, I live a nomadic lifestyle now. It's better to have a couple of guns and train and dry fire and shoot than it is to have a bunch of guns that you never shoot. I mean, if you're a gun collector, that's fine. But this is Gunfighter Life podcast, not Gun Collector Life.
Yeah, I agree exactly on that. So I had guys over today, and they came over to the house, and I have one friend that has a nice collection of Glocks, and then another friend that has a nice collection of guns, and then a new guy that I actually met today while having lunch. He's a doctor, but he looks like he came straight off of the TV show SEAL Team. He's just a beast. And they went into my little tactical room, and they're looking around like, where's all your stuff? And I'm like, right there. And they're like, you have 2 guns and your M4. Well, where's all, but aren't you a gun collector? No, I'm a shooter. I'm a gunfighter.
Yeah.
I take out that gun and shoot it. Now I have a few other things, but they're put away. Like my, the peanut butter Glock is retired and stuff, but in my personal dwelling, I have my 3, and I shoot them proficiently. I shoot them every day. I shoot about anywhere between 250 to 500 rounds a week. And they're looking at it going, okay. And I, in the most kindest way, I said, I love that you guys have all of this stuff, but you're here training from me. I'm not training from you. And the reason why you're training from me is because you've spent all your money on having the guns instead of actually making those tools in your toolbox, becoming masters of your craft, becoming masters of those tools. And that's why you're here with me and I'm not with you. Yeah. And watching them. And then one guy goes, well, we're going shooting tomorrow. There's the same 3 guys we're going out shooting again tomorrow. And the one guy's like, well, I can't afford ammo. One guy says, I can't afford ammo. That's my one buddy. And this new guy's like, well, I'm shooting a 40. And I said, great. Tomorrow you're going to start shooting 9. And 40 is kind of outdated. I'm shooting a 40, but what's better? Is 9 better? And I said, well, 9's easier to find, more apartments, more special operations. Everybody's moving towards 9. And 9 is a great round. There's so many misconceptions behind the theory of, 45 is bigger, so it's going to do more. No, shot placement is a huge thing. So the funny thing is, though, as I was saying, is the other 2 guys are great shooters. One's prior military and stuff. They have all the guns in the world, but how great are you with them? Yeah. And the one guy who has nothing, all he wanted to do, he literally looked at me and goes, I'm a sponge. I just want to sit here and absorb everything. So I'm going to shoot 40 tomorrow. We're shooting 9, and we're going to get you out there again, and we're really going to get you efficient and train you in a way that's going to, hopefully get you home or protect your kids or protect your wife or whatever it is you're doing that, you have that upper hand. So, that's another misconception that I love is the size of the round dictates the damage it's going to impact on someone. And I don't know.
That's a big misconception. Shot placement definitely is key. I did that too when I was a young police officer. Back then everybody thought you had to have 40, and then I thought I had to be even cooler and have 45. And anyway, I settled on 9mm long before it was the cool kid round. Long when most cops told you were a fool if you didn't carry a 40. I figured out by, like you said, training on your own that 9mm is kind of the way to go.
Well, yeah, it's funny because, you get, especially when you get around older people, I've got a quick little story that I always thought was funny. You were there actually, Mike. This was 10, 12 years ago. We were training the concealed carry classes. My ex-father-in-law was there with that SIG that he had, and we had Glocks, and he was laughing. He goes, oh, I've got this 45, and you guys got those plastic Barbie doll guns. And he was actually the worst shooter on the line every time. His gun kept having issues and problems. He was shooting a 45 or a 40 cal. And I remember at the end of it, he got so frustrated and mad because, we were out. Well, obviously you were out shooting him. But I remember afterwards we left, and on our way home, he bought a 9mm Glock.
I do actually remember that now. I had forgotten all about that story, but yeah, I do remember that now.
I remember him sitting there and looking at us, and he goes, well, it's the gun. And you said, let me see it. And you put 2 rounds center mass. And he goes, well, that's because you're a better shooter. And I said, let me see it, Dad. And I put 2 rounds center mass, and he got so pissed off at that. I'll never forget. And on our way home, we stopped off at a local gun store. And once again, I can't say because it'll give away my location, and he immediately bought a 9mm Glock. He bought a Glock 17, and he's had that same Glock 17 Gen 4 since then. And he carries it all the time.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you're much better off, even if a gun looks better on paper, with a gun that you shoot well. And that's why when I first started shooting competition, I shot with a 45, and I just looked logistic. I can shoot a lot more and train a lot more with a 9 than a 45. And it's not that the 45 is a bad round, but you can't tell me that I'm better off with a 45 when I can literally train twice as much with a 9mm, unless you just have a blue sky budget and ammo is free for you, which if you are, you should get in contact with me and support on Patreon. But if you have to pay for your ammo, you can shoot a lot more with, like, let's say your budget is what, I don't know, $100 a month on ammo. Then you can buy a lot more 9 than you can 45. And you can't tell me that the guy that trains with that maximum amount of ammo is not going to be better than the guy with the 45.
Absolutely.
That big hole is not going to make up for that shot placement.
No, and the only thing I would add to that is the only thing that would make those two guys equal shooters with that 9 and that 45 is that they have really bad shooting habits. I don't care how much ammo you buy. I don't care how many rounds you throw down range. If you have bad shooting habits, if you're not getting all of your fundamentals in there, sight alignment, trigger control, breathing, grip, if you don't have any of that, you can shoot 1,000 rounds of 45. You can shoot 1,000 rounds of 22. And if you don't have that, you're going to be the same exact shooter. You're going to be that guy that just can't hit paper. So, understanding those fundamentals. So that muscle memory, anytime you're going out on the range, and I agree, 9mm, you can 100%. I mean, I bought 500 rounds today alone for this week. And I was looking at the prices, and 45 was where we're located at is I think is like $60 to get 50 rounds of 45, where I the same amount and they had it on sale for $12 a box. I could buy 250 rounds for about the same. I think it's like $72 or just under $72 for the same amount of money. I'm able to shoot 200 rounds more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. You remember back in the nostalgia, the ancient days, like 3 years ago, when we could get it for like $5.99 a box?
Yes.
Delivered and shipped to your house.
I remember us having the ammo sitting somewhere in undisclosed location where we had access to it.
Yeah.
And the amount of that pallet, you couldn't even buy a quarter of that pallet nowadays with the prices of ammo. I love the nostalgia days. I complain about it all the time.
Oh, well, that's not the days we live in anymore. And I wanted to touch on something you said that was really good. Yeah, you might have all these guns. And let me be clear, I'm not against collecting guns, but collecting guns does not make you a gunfighter. There's nothing wrong with collecting guns. If you want to have a bunch of guns, because right now having your money in the bank is maybe not the best idea with inflation the way it is. Investing in guns is not a bad idea, but you having 10 guns does not increase your odds of survival if you're not good with what maximum 2 you're going to have on you. Maybe have 2 or 3 guns, a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol or 2, maybe a primary and a backup pistol, and be really good with those. It's good to have other guns. If you want other guns, you want to collect guns, you want to have a collection of old, Lee Enfield or, German Mausers, that's fine. But to be a gunfighter and to be a good one, you have to train with a few guns.
Absolutely, 100%. There, you will get no disagreement with me on that. That's why what's in my house is what I shoot. I would love to be a collector of guns, but right now I'd rather be a collector of
skill.
Ammo.
Oh yeah, I'd rather be a collector of skill. I'm actually, well, you don't know, but I stepped away from my full-time management job to do the podcasting thing. And right now I'm kind of going into savings and going into ammo savings. I had ammo stored up for the apocalypse and stuff. So I'm steadily eating into that a little bit at a time, but no worries. Okay. I would rather, like you said, you would rather be invested in ammo. I'd rather be invested in skill, because even if I have 10,000 rounds and I suck in my next gunfight, I'm just a dead guy with 9,000 rounds or 9,995 rounds.
Well, we're both huge advocates, and skill is 100%. I mean, if I'm going to spend my money on something, I'd rather spend it on ammo so I can build my skill set.
Yeah, I know that's what you meant. You and I both know the importance of dry fire, but you do have to live fire, occasionally. So you need that skill. But I also think the people that think that guns can be like a safety blanket, if I just own it, I'm going to be safe, also have this thing like, if I have 5,000 rounds saved up, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you have 5,000 rounds and you're not training, like I'll train up until the point where until I can just load my magazines. Having the skill is more important than having a bunch of ammo and never training.
Absolutely. You can have a $600 gold-plated hammer, but if you can't swing it and put a nail through drywall into a stud, your hammer's useless.
Yeah, it's a good call.
Hammer and that.
So we talked a lot about guns and gun collecting. You want to maybe tell us a little bit about young John and how he got started into guns? What was your first, forte into guns? How'd you get into guns?
a great story. So my dad is a shooter. My dad has been a shooter since I was born. My dad's belonged to the same gun club my entire life. My dad is a multi-world and national championship shooter in his style of shooting. He shoots black powder cartridge. My dad is a record setter. From the time I was little, I've had a gun in my hand. First start off with the Daisy Red Ryder.
Nice.
Backyard doing target practice with my dad. Moved up to a pumped pellet gun with a little scope on it. My dad started teaching me a little bit more precision. I've got this amazing picture of me of the morning of my birthday where my dad came and woke me up. I'm in my tidy whitey underwears. I think I'm about 9 or 10 years old with my first Ruger 1022 wood stock. Dad had bought that for me, put a scope on it, and then started taking me to the gun range. As a kid, I did Olympic shooting, junior Olympic shooting. And so from the time I can remember, I was raised hunting, shooting. But the funny thing is, this is something that's really interesting. I was always in love with the military. And unfortunately, I did sign up at the beginning of the Gulf War when I was getting out of high school, and a birth defect. So I was unable to go in the military because they took me because they needed bodies. But when the Gulf War started and ended just as fast, they started getting rid of people, and then they wouldn't take me at that point, even though that my birth defect was taken care of, a heart issue. So I started looking at different avenues and stuff. And I've always loved shooting. And I even had, when I was going to sign up with the Marines and went and did all my stuff, I shot with an old drill instructor, and my dream career in life was scout sniper for the Marine Corps. That's what I wanted to do. So I took shooting extremely serious as a young adult and as a young kid, because I knew where my career path was at that time. That's where my goal was. And I've shot since then. So I've been shooting since I was probably, I think about 7 or 8 years old. I've been shooting. So I've spent most of my life with that tool in my hand. So
the way of the gun, man. You and I both. I've some of my earliest memories with guns. I don't know what happened to my old Red Ryder, but I still have my original 1022.
Oh, really? I still have my original Red Ryder.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I still have it. It's my dad's safe.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I look at it every time I go down there. He'll open up the safe, and he has my first Red Ryder, my pump pellet gun, and my 22. He has all 3 of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I shot many of thing I wasn't supposed to with the Red Ryder.
Yeah. At some point, as I got older, when I turned 21, I got a concealed carry permit, which was 30 years ago. But once I got that concealed carry permit, I still wasn't sure on. I was one of those guys that got it because I could, and didn't understand the responsibility of having it. And I sat down with the guy one day, and he was a police officer in Washington. They're talking one day, getting coffee. I remember that. And he started telling me about what it means to be responsible if you're carrying a firearm. And he said, hey, it's great that you carry, but if you need to use that and stop somebody's behavior pattern, and you miss and you hit an innocent person, you defeated the purpose. And I was like, that makes total sense. So at that point, that's when I started taking the responsibility of carrying a firearm extremely serious. My whole mindset changed because of that one person's conversation with me and saying, hey, it's great that you look cool. It's great that you're carrying, but it's a tool like any other tool. And if you don't know how to use it, you can create damage with it. And that damage is going to stick with you for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Take it from John. You can look good and still know what you're doing. Like you don't have, just because you have all the cool kid kit, and there's nothing wrong with it, that does not make you a good shooter. That does not make you ready for anything. The fact that you have the skill the fact that you have the skill, all that other stuff is just the tools to allow you to make that skill into a reality. But without
Yes,
the
absolutely.
skill, all the other stuff is just stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said about a carpenter, you could give some millennial that's never touched a screwdriver in his life the best set of carpentry tools in the world, and he's not going to probably turn out a good table unless he's some kind of savant. But the guy that's been doing carpentry all his life, you can give him the mediocre tools, and he'll turn out a fantastic table because he knows what he's doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the common saying? Having a guitar does not make you a rock star. Knowing how to rock out on a guitar makes you a rock star.
Right.
Yeah. Knowing how to run a gun and drive a gun fast and accurate, that makes you a gunfighter.
Absolutely. Well, that makes you a gunfighter in the mindset of, I mean, look at and I don't want to get political, but look at the recent shooting we just had. And that one guy now, I think he's probably like the most hated person out there right now, that literally is sitting there, putting, hand sanitizer in his hand, who did nothing. And that guy was running for all that time. And none of those people had the right mindset. None of those people had the right mindset to go in there and stop an active assailant, and taking life.
Well, as you know, we stepped up and served our country, our community on a team to stop active shooters.
Absolutely.
And what saddens me is that we're needed at all, number one, because I would like to live in a world where that evil doesn't exist, but sadly we don't live in that world. And number two, I'm sad that we had to exist because there weren't men everywhere to make our job null and void. You're telling me there's not an able-bodied man in any of those environments, in that school and wherever, that is willing to carry a gun and be proficient with it? They should be in every environment all the time. Every Walmart. If there's 20 guys in a Walmart, you're telling me there's not one with the set of man parts to carry a gun and be proficient with it, to be there just in case?
Absolutely.
Like you're telling me that not every school is willing to have one teacher, one man willing to stand up against evil and be disciplined enough to practice with it? Why should a team of anybody have to go in anywhere? There should be a man there that's willing and able to defeat that evil and change that person's behavior.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, it's like, and you brought up us working on a team together. I mean, there's that great saying, everybody wants to be a gunfighter until it's time to do gunfighter things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we had, and I'm not going to say where we did anything because, we have non-disclosure agreements that we signed and stuff. But, that one situation where we had a call for a potential active shooter, and we had a team of 27 people, and you, myself, and one other person showed up and literally cleared an entire floor by ourselves. The only one that showed up. I think I was at every single gun call we ever had. And so were you. But it was funny because I remember afterwards we're sitting there looking around going, okay, so that was a little stressful, but we had all those people. And just because you have the title of a gunfighter, or just because you have the title of a police officer, or just because you have a time, it still doesn't make you one. You have to have that mindset. When that phone goes off and I pick it up and I just got home from a 12-hour shift and I'm just getting in the shower and I get out wet, throwing on my kit and running out the door and meeting up with my team, and we rally up on a floor, and you look around, and you're like, great. So out of all of us, there's 3 of us here to clear, this huge ass floor, and we don't know what we're about to do. That's a gunfighter mindset. The people that show up for that, those are the guys that are willing to actually show where their man parts are, as you put it. But those are the guys that you want standing next to you, because everybody else, it's just a show. And later on, that we got better equipped with guys who had the right mindset, because I know we weeded out people that didn't. But even still, I mean, you've got to be willing to go in there and do it. And just because you have a title doesn't actually make you something.
I agree. Whoever signs your paycheck, that doesn't make you a gunfighter.
Yes.
God calls you to be a warrior, and you are blessed with the discipline and fortitude to work that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite stories is, and I know you know this, Gideon, the God, and is like, and God's like, hey, I want you to weed down your army, and we're going to go in with, 300. And he's like, well, how will I know? And he goes, well, I want you to take them down and let them drink, and I will weed them out. And when they get down there, he says, those who lap from the water like a dog, those are the guys you don't want. But those who pick up the water and drink from their hands with their eyes forward and spears in hand, those are your warriors. Those are the guys you want. Here's this huge army. He's like, that's great that you got a big army, but I want 300 warriors that are going to go in and get the job done. And, when I train with people or I'm training people, that's what I'm looking for. I'm always looking around for, all right, who's the guy that's here to be like, yeah, I just trained with Tim Kennedy or Tu Lamb or any of those guys. And like, yeah, I got this picture with them. Or the guy that's seriously standing there going, okay, I'm here training with this guy because this guy is going to teach me the skills I need to be better at protecting myself, my neighbors, my friends, or any innocent bystander. Those are the guys that I look for when I'm.
Sadly, those men are few and far between.
Very few and far between. So I'd rather be in God's army like the 300 than the masses that are willing to do nothing but look cool.
Yeah, I agreed with that, man. That's a great transition point. We'll segue from that. You are also a bit of a prepper, as am I. Anything you want to talk about? Like, I'll give you a scenario. It's the apocalypse. The EMP zombie chipmunks are upon us. Whatever the case is, you got to grab your kit. What handgun, what rifle, what knife, what are you grabbing?
So knife wise, I'll have my working knife, which is my SOG that I got back when we worked together.
You love that thing, man. You've had that thing as long as I've known you.
I've had that for 12 years. I love it. That's my daily knife. But if I'm going to have a combat knife, my karambits all day long, custom made karambits, great knives. It may not be multi-purpose, but for the job that it has, I love them. I'm still going to stick with what I shoot every day. I mean, I'm not going to train with something unless I'm going to use that tool. That tool is my life, preserving tools. So whatever I have that I shoot every day and I know like the back of my hand, I know that gun better than I know the details of my mom's life or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those tools are the ones I'm going to take with me because those are the ones I know better than anything. And I know how they shoot. I know how I shoot with them. I know what my limits are with them. And that's what I'm going to grab.
Nice. So but you have to pick. You got to pick between your staccato and your shadow systems. So which one are you going to go with in the apocalypse?
It would be the shadow systems because it does have an optic on it and it has my raised night sights. So if my optic goes down, I still have my iron sights.
Good call. And I love STIs, but that shadow system, which I believe is based on a Glock Gen 3, is probably a lot easier to maintain and work on.
Yes, it's based off, I believe, the Glock Gen 4.
Oh, Gen 4, my bad.
Hey, we can't do it, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not a Glock connoisseur, sommelier of Glocks, whatever you want to call it. That is not my flavor. Okay, so you got to choose now, but your long gun, are you going to grab your 1022 or are you going to grab your FN Police or are you going to grab your M4 11.5?
I'm probably going to grab my M4. I can hunt with it. I do have a plate carrier system that I use. I have, things that help you see a little bit better in the dark. I train with my kit all the time. And if I need to throw on body armor or whatever that situation calls for in that apocalypse scenario, I have my muscle memory is there for all of that. Or if I need to go hunt, I can shoot a deer with my M4. I can shoot whatever I need to with it. Probably not a squirrel because it's going to open.
Yeah, I respect your opinion. That's why you're on the podcast. I gear towards other things because I've been in gunfights I can count on my hand, even with my career. But I've had to eat a lot, and for eating, I like the shotgun. So I pick a shotgun. But if hopefully we're together in the apocalypse, and you can have your M4, and I'll have my shotgun, and we'll be good to go.
Absolutely. Well, I'd have your 6 all day long. I have.
I know you would, man, and I'd have yours. That's one thing about the team that I miss is that, you have a group of guys that are willing to literally put their life on the line for you day to day. And you grow close to people like that, man.
Well, and I love the tribe mentality. And I tell people all the time, because that's what I miss the most, of that tribe mentality and being around my tribe of people. The hardest thing is when you still have your tribe, but you're not all living on the same reservation. I'm not trying to be.
I got you.
But when you're tribe, like right now, and during our podcasts that we're doing now, one of my other closest friends is stationed at Pope Air Force Base, and they're getting ready to go do some stuff. And, we're talking tip of the spear guys. And that's where, some of my guys are. There's the buddies, they're scattered. But just there doesn't mean that we're not in each other's life all the time. But it is hard not to be around the people that you love the most. I mean, you and I, we shared a dwelling space for a while, and we went out shooting. We did so much together. We dry fired together. We philosophized on things. We taught each other. We grew together. And when you don't have that next to you daily, you miss it so much. But, that's the one. That's the one thing I miss the most. That's where my heart is the heaviest.
That's true, man. There's a theory on that's why PTSD is so bad today. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not I don't deal in like brain neuroscience, but they say since us men are tribal, humans are tribal creatures, that when we get that tribe, either in the military or in a gunfighting group, when we have that tight-knit tribe of men that trust their lives to each other, you get to be part of that. Even if the times themselves might suck, when you lose that, that you're missing something. And they think that's a lot of what modern PTSD is, because most of us in the modern world don't have a tight-knit tribe. We have, whatever, and we go live in our own little house, and we all drive to work and then drive home, and we're not part of a tribe anymore. And they think that might be part of the big reason why PTSD is so common today.
No, I would agree with that 100%. We've had such a huge cultural shift, especially I remember in the 80s, my mom kept coffee and snacks and stuff around because family would just show up at your house. They would just show up, and the community was so much bigger then. Nowadays, it's, people have gotten away from that. And it's, you hear a knock at the door and you're almost telling your family to get on the floor and belly crawl because you don't want anybody to know that you're there, and
there was a time in a small town where people knew their neighbors and depended on their neighbors, but that's for whether that happened on its own or whether that was by design, that's kind of largely went away, at least here in America, at least in most places. Yes. Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. On that prepper mindset, one of the things I wanted to add is,
the one thing I tell a lot of people I know, I've got friends that are Christians. I got friends that are LDS. I've got friends in all these different backgrounds, and everybody kind of has their own way of prepping and their own way of thinking about how they're going to do things. And I think the biggest thing for me is I always ask them, like, well, what's your plan? What is your plan? So you and your family get in a vehicle and you bug out. And once you get there, what's your security look like? How big is the area? Like, there's so much that goes into what you're doing and planning. Because like I said, I have friends that have all this storage stuff. I'm like, how are you going to haul all that? How are you going to get that point A to point B? And once you get it there, how are you going to secure it? Because you and your 3 kids and your wife aren't going to be able to secure all that where you're going. So I think my biggest advice is, if you're going to do something, if you're going to bug in or bug out, have a plan, have a great network of people, and have them as a part of your plan. Make sure that whatever you're doing or decide to do, that it's a secured situation and that it's the best situation or the best location. Just don't fly off the handle and be like, we're getting the hell out of here. It's all happening. Rocket ship. And go to the mountain. Okay, well, I can't hunt up here. I didn't bring a gun. Like, have a plan. Just be thoughtful about what you're going to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. That's good advice. And while we transition out of this, can people support you, find you? I know you say you want to be Gray Man in person, but is there a way people can support you or subscribe to you or anything like that?
Not that I'm trying to be secretive. I'm just trying to protect myself. I know that anytime you do a podcast like this, people want to get on your Facebook page or your Twitter, or your Instagram, which I don't have any of that. I do have a Facebook, but people will get on there and they're like, "Oh my, you're blah, 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 blah." Or I just don't need the extra
drama.
Comment. But no, the only support, if you want to support me, pray for me. Pray for me, for my family, pray for the ones I love. If you really want to support me, support Mike. Mike's doing an amazing thing. We've been friends for
thanks, man,
a very long time, but it's guys like this that are trying to get information out there, trying to guide and redirect people into a path of being a warrior poet or a warrior monk or whatever terminology you want to use, or a better husband, a better father. Who I am today is not who I was yesterday or what I did yesterday, Yeah. So if you want to support me, support the ones that are out there actually doing the work and loving what they do. So this guy gave up everything to do these podcasts. And that right there, that's the warrior mentality. He is so passionate about what he's doing and feels that calling so deeply that he walked away from his, like you said, his financial stability to put this information out for you guys. So support Mike. That's how you can support me.
Well, that's not what I expected, man, but I'm humbled. Well, with that kind of a setup, make sure you scroll down, hit subscribe so you get more of these podcasts. Hit some stars. It's a free, easy way to help the podcast out. And if you really want to help the podcast, go to goodshepherdtraining.com. Consider becoming a patron.
I miss you too, man. If you're in Oregon, I can get on a puddle jumper and come and see you.
I'm in Oregon for now. It's beautiful, actually. I wish you were here too, man, because it's rainforest and been running around chasing bears in the woods, and it's pretty cool. Living the nomadic lifestyle definitely has its drawbacks.
Right. Like I said, if you put honey on your head, the bears will come to you. You can be a honey.
Nice, man.
Here's the thing I want to leave off with. God calls us to be protectors. God calls us to be protectors of our kids, our wives, our girlfriends. There's too many boys in this world. There's not enough men. There's a lot of boys out there who hurt and destroy others emotionally and stuff, who are not good protectors. The one thing I want to say is look at what your legacy is. When you stand back and you look at yourself in the mirror, what kind of a man do you want to be? Do you want to be a boy or do you want to be a man? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? I just encourage you as men or even as women to thoughtfully look inside your heart and look at the kids you have or the person next to you and know that that's the person that you're supposed to protect. You're supposed to protect her heart or his heart. You're supposed to protect them physically, spiritually, emotionally. I'd like to encourage all the boys out there to start reading the Bible, reading books on how to become a man and actually prepare. So you're not out there destroying amazing people in this world to appease yourself. Don't be a narcissist. Make those people an asset and not an afterthought. That's what I'd like to leave your listeners with. Become a man. That's
great. That's great advice, man. And the Bible, the instruction manual for life and for men, for sure. I appreciate you, brother. I love you, brother. And I'll talk to you soon.
I love you too. Thank you for having me on the show. I just like to say one last thing to Michelle. Thank you for giving me the confidence, the encouragement to continue to grow and to become a better man for myself and for you and everyone around me. I just like to give a big shout out for her, because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have had the confidence to actually sit here and talk to you and open up about things. So
yeah, I'm sure she's going to appreciate that. And you did fantastic.
Hopefully we'll see each other on the range.
Yeah. Amen. All right, man. God willing, I'll see you someday again. All right, Gunfighters. I hope you enjoyed that special episode of Gunfighter Life. If you did, this is content that you can share. You can hit that little share icon and send this to other people that you like that you think might enjoy it. And to talk about Patreon one more time, that's the number one way you can support the podcast. And the patrons got this content early because it takes a long time to edit this. They got this early and they got the unedited, uncut version. There's also a lot of other cool content on there. So this episode was already long today, man. So I'm not going to do a tactical tip, but I will not forego the tactical verse of the day. The scripture reads, "In the last days, hard times will come, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, hard-hearted, unforgiving, backbiting, without self-control, brutal, hating what is good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding on to an outward form of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid these people." With that, men, thanks for listening to Gunfighter Life. Be strong, be blessed.